her old boss that told her that she wasn't promotable with like the two middle fingers up.
Welcome to How Did We Get Here, the podcast where each week our two talking heads, being myself, Jess Bost,
and Mark Newfield,
bring on guests to learn more about their past 5 jobs before landing where they are today.
Because, as you know, life is super simple, straightforward, and never makes people ask, wait, you did what?
Join us for an honest convo on career exploration, overcoming setbacks, considering when to pivot, and offering encouragement on how to find value in your career and life choices.
And with that, let's ask the question.
Holy crap,
how did I get here?
Together.
And we are back. Today is Bring Your Ovaries to Work Day at the podcast in honor of the one and only Arlene Moss. So, Mark, are you ready?
That's a loaded statement, I think. I can say that I am not ready, nor am I able to contribute any ovaries to this conversation. But I am definitely ready to dive into our conversation with Arlene, who is a fabulous person. And I'm also a firm believer that we all benefit when everyone brings all of themselves to our profession.
Okay, noted. Fair point. I won't require you to bring ovaries to this conversation. Thankful that you're not, actually. So I'm glad you're here, though. And I think the conversation that we are going to have about Arlene, one, it's been living rent-free in the back of my mind since we talked with her in March at the Shift conference. And here's why. One of the things, and you mentioned it, bringing all of ourselves to this profession. One of the things that's been on my heart since I came into financial services has been, how do I bring myself into this industry? Not only as a woman, or even a Southern girl with a thick accent, which comes out a little heavier when I'm around my dad. But even those things are certainly part of it, right? So how do I stay who I am and also embrace what's in front of me and not miss potential opportunities that I see other people getting by already being that cookie cutter shape of this industry, or already conforming to the box that this industry says, yes, you belong here. And the thing that I've gravitated toward about Arlene from the beginning is that there is no other Arlene in the world. And if you've ever met Arlene, you know, like, she just is who she is. So she brings herself fully to her work here, and it's charming and it's endearing and it's encouraging. It's amazing to know her. These are all things I told her when we did the podcast live. She is who I aspire to be like, and she does what I aspire to do in this industry. So I feel like I've fought tooth and nail to stay me so far, and to bring me here and to have me and to be me here in this industry. And so being able to sit with people like her and hear her journey, how she has done that, and for 30 years has done that, that was just everything for me.
Well, it's, I think, truly fascinating as a bit of a closet scientist, that if we have the science right, and of course the real scientists will tell you that we may well not have it right, but it's the best proposal we have at the moment, is that all of us, literally all of us, and everything organic in this world evolved from one single cell. So the uniqueness of Arlene, the uniqueness of you, all came from the same spot. And to me, it's the most incredible thing about our universe, period. And out of that single cell and all of this evolution and, 150 or 200,000 years of development of what Jim O'Shaughnessy calls brain OS, we have this one amazing lady with an incredible story. So what we need to do now is roll the tape and get some context for today's topic.
I have been working with fee-only financial planners since 2004. So, good God, 20 years, people. Time that this is weird because I'm like 25.
Well, you've seen the evolution of this industry.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, yeah, I started in kindergarten working in this industry. So, And I have, and it is funny because I do sometimes have like, get off my lawn. You think this recession was bad? Let me tell you about that tech bubble. And super funny in a sad sort of way. I actually worked at a mortgage-backed security desk on Black Monday, which was a long, thank you for that face, Mark. Yeah. I worked for Kidder Peabody, and we were talking about this yesterday, like Bonfire of the Manatees, which is a book, if you are young and haven't read it, it's wild. Wolf of Wall Street, The Big Short, all three of those.
But as a
books,
female,
movies,
you were on Wall Street doing that then.
Oh no,
on a bond
I
desk.
was a peon. And there's a reason I separated that word.
Sure.
No, I was a woman. Me and my ovaries came to work, and we got lunch and we got coffee.
Right.
And we got yelled at.
Yeah.
And one of my classics is I had a boss that would.
You got lunch.
snap-
You meant you went and got everyone else lunch.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you didn't have ovaries, you were way too important to leave and go get your own lunch.
Yeah.
And it's wild. And I think it did shape me, because I'm working for all of these men, and the women, all the assistants were women, and it was just your thing. Like, you went out, you got your guy lunch. It was very, I can't, is there a statute of limitations on certain things?
No.
Like, they paid you under the table. Can I edit that if I'm going to go to jail? But they paid you under the table, like a third of my income. And we had the same education. That's the wild thing.
Right.
Is my boss was 2 years old, maybe. Same education, same caliber of school. So not even like, but I've got a bachelor's degree, but you got one from Harvard. No, he was University of Alabama. Like, I'm a Big Ten girl. We were the same. And he went to New York, got transferred to the New York office. And I loved his clients. I loved those relationships. Working on that bond, it was fun and exciting. And I went to my boss's boss, and I was like, hey, I would love to move into Tom's space and get the training, go through the training, and made my little argument. And I was like, his clients are asking for me to do that.
Yeah.
And they are feeling more comfortable. And he's like, oh, we don't promote from within. And I'm sorry, that was 30 years ago. No, don't make me do the math. That was code for we don't promote women. Like, period, end of story. So I went back to school, got a programmer degree, completely changed. Like, that was it. I was like,
I was like, that was it.
I
curtain
peaced
call.
out. I was
The
like,
end.
no, I don't need to put up with this.
I love that. I think we got a good bit of context there, didn't we, Mark?
We did. And while you could say that was 30 years ago, it's still hard to hear stories like this. And we still have stories like this, which kind of sort of makes it even worse. But let's understand that if folks like Arlene had actually believed the message that they were getting because of the way they looked or their genes, or the differences in personality type, right? We wouldn't have been able to have that conversation. Right. It really, in a lot of ways, hasn't changed that much. And we do have a 150,000 plus year old operating system. And as a reformed, application developer, this particular operating system has no coding structure. There aren't any developer notes, and there's no user guide. All of which you would get with a piece of software that runs on your phone.
And for those of you who aren't seeing Mark, like, he's pointing to his brain, like that's the.
If there was anything there, I would.
Fair, fair point. I love you, Mark. I love that. So that was a good bit of context on Arlene, but wait, there's still more.
There's more?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Again, fortunately for us, we got to hear it. Unfortunately for her, that wasn't the end of the context that she gave us on her story and working through figuring out her career being a woman.
So I was a programmer for a while. And at that time, there were more women because that was the early days. For those of you that don't listen to nerdy podcasts like I do, this was before personal computers.
Right.
When personal computers came out, there was a huge shift in the industry because it was personal computers were first marketed as toys to boys.
It's true.
And so in this shift, like if you came along, I don't know, I'm going to guess 10 years later, don't quote me on that, but 10 years later, very different dynamic. You get to college. I get to college, my first programming class, nobody knows anything. We are all as dumb as a box of rocks. And we are doing super basic stuff. I'm going to assign seats on an airplane. Like I'm going to do hello world, all this basic stuff. I want to say 10 years later, the guys are coming and they've already been programming in their bedrooms at home on their toy. The young ladies coming to college, they're just like I was. It was really fascinating to go from super, super sexist industry to, heck yeah, my body parts don't matter. I can do anything.
Yeah.
And that's where I stayed until I had kids.
Well, her ability to pivot in some pretty big ways, quickly in the scheme of how we run our lives and take opportunities, regardless of circumstances, is what's really incredible and impressive about her. And I love that we got into this next part just for so many reasons. She's proved that she's smart, talented, and able to excel in a variety of careers, finance and tech, and start a family and raise children, which I would argue might be one of the most noble things in this world. But I mean, a lot of people would say you're throwing your career away.
Okay, so I have kids.
I executive business coach for financial advice.
I know, which is not the same, right? There is a leap. I stay home with kids because I have that luxury, that privilege, and I knew from a very early age I wanted to be a mom, and here I was a mom, yay. I won't bore you with the details on how that played out. I was a working mom for a little while, and then I was like, nope, I don't want to do this anymore. So I took a gap of raising these kids. I have 3 kids. And
where you just kicked your feet back and did nothing.
I did.
Yeah,
I did. I ate so many bonbons. So many bonbons. You have no idea. And Oprah wasn't going to watch herself.
That's right.
Arlene, who painted your toenails? I just got to know.
And I hope every stay-at-home mom or anyone who has had to do anything with children realize how much sarcasm is in this. So it was, it's funny because I used to think, I can never quit because I'll be so bored. Oh, gracious me.
Not with 3 children, no chance.
No. So I did that for a while. And then the youngest one was headed to kindergarten or preschool or whatever. I was like, I ought to, get some egg money. Maybe I should get back and talk in full sentences to grown-ups. And I would joke with my friends, like, I keep wandering around looking for a job, but every time I walk through the dining room, there is not one there. I don't know. And a dear friend of mine who is a family financial planner was a member of an organization, and they were hiring. They needed just an admin, like 4 hours a week. I'm like, this is perfect. That is nap time, people. And so she's like, okay, I got a job you can do in your dining room. And this was long enough ago that I was printing training manuals. But when you print things and you have to assemble them in your living room, aside from the fact you have, a soap opera on, because I am a cliche, I'm reading that. And I'm reading about this, like, the only financial planning thing.
So you're a very curious person.
Apparently, about some things. About some things. That's another podcast, all the things I'm not curious about. But anyway, I had the most wonderful boss. So I start just admin, can you run a photocopier at Office Max? Yes, I can. Okay, you're qualified. And then every time I would have a kid in school a little longer, or I wanted to grow a little bit, she would learn something about me or see something in that curiosity and be like, here, you do this. How about we throw this on you? So I'm slowly amping up the hours. She's slowly uncovering, oh, you have a marketing degree? How did we not know that? Well, because it wasn't relevant to making photocopies. And wait, you have an information systems degree? How did we not know that? Again, not relevant to making copies. So I took on the community manager role, which involved a little bit of background programming so I could feel like a smart girl again. And then there's marketing stuff, and and all the while I am falling in love with these planners.
Oh,
They are my heroes because dark secret, if I could cover this micro, I hate investments. Like I find them boring. I find them stressful. If you can be boring and stressful at the same time. The thing I love about buy and hold is I don't have to do anything. And so people like this and you're helping people. And I always say I've used for years, you are saving the world one family at a time. And it was just glorious.
Thank you for justifying our existence.
Oh,
that's right.
I could go on for how long how many episodes am I on? And so every step of the way, this boss is like, we think you'd be good for this. We think you could do that. And finally I go to her when I don't know, some kid of mine goes to college. And I said, you know what? I'm going to have to go get a real job. Like, I don't know if you've checked tuition, but I got to work like full-time grown-up work. And she's like, oh, thank God, because we need to hire somebody full-time and we were afraid you wouldn't want to do it.
Oh.
So it is just this perfect thing. And it was a coaching program. It's like, take the training and now we want to build in this coaching element. So they let me run with it. They were like, you are just a natural. Well, keep in mind these children who, spoiler alert, they're all three absolutely perfect. I do have wonderful, wonderful children, and I love raising them and parenting and guiding. And so this grew.
That's
and that
coaching on
might
its
have
own.
sound, I was going to say, that might have sound kind of dismissive, but I don't mean for it to. It's this helping and supporting and finding your strength and finding the best thing about you. You and I have had some talks, girl.
We have.
And I love that. I mean, it brings me so much joy and so much faith in the future. And oh my gosh, yeah, I just love it. So that is my long-winded short story of how I ended up where I am.
I want to point out a few things here that I have had personal experience with. One is working while being the primary caregiver for your kids. Not easy. She danced through it in our conversation. Her comment around sitting at the table or doing her work.
Sitting at the kitchen table. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how you do
lots
that.
of sarcasm. If you didn't hear it in her tone, I want to point out lots of sarcasm. But raising kids at the same time as having a career, whether it's full-time or part-time, is literally two jobs. One that doesn't just start when the other one ends, like you might arrange if you had two literal jobs. But when you have kids, it overlaps entirely with the other. You're constantly being pulled in multiple directions because your kids don't decide to get sick at 4:30 when you clock out of work. They get sick when they get sick. And usually that's about 2 hours after you've dropped them off at school. So, she casually talked about how perfect it was that she could work during nap time. And that honestly cracked me up because I remember being a zombie during nap time, like thinking, yes, I can work during nap time. But when nap time hit, it was like the only thing I wanted to do while my kids were napping was also nap. So she's a real rock star for navigating all of that, in my opinion.
And navigate, I think, I know it's an understatement. Yeah. She excelled at it. And the key thing, I think, for all of us, but she exemplifies it, staying curious and humble. She was opportunistic. Mm-hmm. She was patient when she had to be. That's pretty wise and hard to pull off. But the net result is she was able to continue to grow in the role she had at the time, and eventually resulted essentially in the creation of a new role, a coaching role. So now she ends up at XYPN, where she has a huge impact in the world of financial advice. And in the very place where she was told that she wasn't going to be able to succeed there, much less exceed there, because of her gender, of all things.
It's such an incredible story. She's absolute gold. In a funny and humorous way, imagine her on a motorcycle kind of riding by her old boss that told her that she wasn't promotable with like the 2 middle fingers up, just kind of driving on, being like, I made it, because she did.
If I was her old boss, I'd be worried that she was carrying a bazooka, not a hand signal. But
I mean, it's just,
that was a story right there.
In case there's someone out there that is listening that isn't totally at this point convinced that she's absolute gold, we have one more clip of her just recapping and remembering and thinking back on her life and what it means to her, the meaning of it all to her, because she would never do that. She would never ride by with the 2 middle fingers up. Her posture, her position is, like you said, Mark, it's humble, it's curious, it's wise, it's, in the way that she reflected on her life and career. You got to listen in.
For good or for ill, like I've made a lot of people cringe over the years because things come out of my mouth, as you may have seen, and sometimes they're not as polished, but I try to keep my heart in the right place. I try to learn. When I mess things up, I really try to learn from it so that next time I'm better.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I don't think I answered your question at all.
I think you did.
think you did.
Here's Arlene Moss, a decent and honest human being.
Yeah.
And flawed. Please don't forget flawed.
Aren't we all?
Yeah,
Yes,
very messy, all of
yes.
us.
Aren't we all?
My curiosity with that is that because you are so authentic and because you have the messy part of Arlene that you're willing to lay out there alongside everything else, that creates that freedom and that space for you to offer it to others as well as to yourself. And so that creates some back and forth opportunity to grow.
Yes. Oh my gosh, thank you. I really appreciate it. You just triggered, like, my brain just went, boom. Yes. I think that's something I've realized, that as I throw things out there and as I am stupidly flawed, like the aforementioned email to the completely wrong podcast host, like I admit that, like, oh my gosh, I'm such a goob. And then you feel the safety to be like,
the safety.
I can be a goober in front of Arlene and it's totally okay. Or I can be a goofball in this room because Arlene's already been a goofball and everybody's used to it. And so it's safe. I think I have learned that, sometimes trial and error, but mainly because I have done it, but I've lived to tell the tale. And so I'm like, oh, it is okay. And I've also seen that impact from others. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm some hero that's like, hey, let me act like an idiot so you can all feel better about yourself. That's not really what I mean. But I want you to realize that it is safe to mess up. It is okay. We will come back from mess up. Sorry, I'm bashing the microphone.
Isn't that a good way to get to a conclusion here?
Yeah.
Be who you are. It's safe to mess up. Just be a decent human.
I like that.
That sounds pretty good to me.
I need a bumper sticker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the biggest flex
Yeah.
is not flexing.
Right.
Which is why we're so grateful to have her on the podcast. Her story was amazing. She's hilarious in a very humble sort of way. And yes, it helps if you can see facial expressions because there is a fair amount of sarcasm, not that I would know anything about that. So we thank her for sharing her story, and we thank all of you who are listening to us.
All right, Mark, let's get into it, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
So I am not going to beat around the bush, so therefore we are not going to beat around the bush. You do not have an option.
Nor do I.
We are going to go straight for it. What Arlene faced in the earlier part of her career is nothing short of discrimination.
That is just 100% true. And as much as being a male, I would like to say that it was fair. It sure as heck wasn't fair.
So I want to talk about that because even though it's not always as overt as an equally educated and talented woman leaving the office to go pick up lunch and coffee for a man who is considered more vital for the business activities, it may not look like that today, but discrimination is still happening today.
That is completely true. All you have to do is look at the news or read the paper
Yeah.
on any given day.
The other thing we know about it is that it is absolutely affecting the financial situation for people who are being discriminated against.
That is completely true. One of our advisors went last year, a woman, Angela Lesser, went last year and got her CDFA. And the reason why is she had her own personal experiences. And up until Chad joined us, I was actually the only male in our office. But I've seen things over the last 15 years working with my team here that really open your eyes. And we have talked to a number of clients, virtually all of them female, but there was a male that Angela talked to last week, but virtually all of them female, who at the point of separation had no idea what the spending budget for the household was, or limited, had no idea what their net worth was, didn't know how their money was invested. And look, I'm not saying that it's easy to raise your hand and say, well, these are intelligent people, they should take responsibility. And I happen to agree with that. But the fact of the matter is that faced with having a rock fight with your spouse every week, or learning more about where your family is financially, is a difficult choice to make. And I don't know what choice I would make. But I haven't had to face that. You know, in my particular family, I happen to be the one who has the interest in finance and the skill set. My wife was a very successful operating executive who retired as the vice president of supply chain for a major flooring distributor. I mean, I just happen to have the financial skills, and maybe it's part of the way she was raised, which is probably discriminatory in and of itself. I don't know, because her mother was very successful as well, but she was just raised with no interest in the financials of the household. But what I do is send her a spreadsheet every month, although I don't think she reads it. But at least if I get run over by a bus, she knows where all our accounts are, what the balances were at that point in time, who our advisors are, the account numbers, the passwords. I want her to know. She just doesn't really have an interest. And we had kind of this hilarious conversation just yesterday. We're doing an engagement party for our grandniece, and my wife was covering the facility, the rental of the facility, and the food. Its cost is being split up among the family, but we are writing a check. And she calls me and asks me if it's okay to write a check of, X dollars. I was like, I think you have access to our bank accounts.
Yeah, like there's an app on the phone, I'm sure. Yeah.
So I find it kind of bizarre, but she just called me. And I told her the same thing I say every time. Here's how much money we keep in the bank. We always have this much money in the bank. As long as you're writing a check less than that, you don't have to worry about it. Now, let's understand that's a first world problem. We're very fortunate. I've been working full time for 51 years. We're not poor, but I mean, it's indicative that this is fairly common, that women in particular are either intentionally excluded from the financial side of their lives and their spousal lives, or they're educated and trained in a way that that's not something that you pay attention to. And that is discriminatory in and of
it is,
just in itself.
And I think there's a lot of, the first step is awareness, right? There's a lot going on in the world to raise awareness. The second step that sometimes gets missed is acceptance of the information as true and valid. And so that is a belief system. And we talked about that is something that personally takes work on changing your convictions and your beliefs about whether or not the facts are as presented are true and valid. The third part, which you're starting to get into, which one of the things truthfully and truly I love about you, Mark, is that you recognize between you and your wife that when it comes to finances, there is, in fact, a power differential. Whether it is,
I don't have to like it, but I've learned that I can't change it.
One, acknowledging it and accepting it as true and valid. And then also, because you care that it exists, now you are taking on the responsibility of what does it mean for me to have the financial power in this relationship. My wife does not necessarily want to take on the financial power of this relationship.
I actually have asked her to do it, and she has chosen not to.
She's chosen not to, and that's okay. That's absolutely okay. There are some people in this world, me being one of them, I like to own the power. And so my husband and I have a very equal relationship when it comes to financial power. And that is something that I want and he wants. And so we have mutually figured out how to navigate forward. And this is why whenever I work with couples, a lot of times I am very careful to find out who holds the power, who wants to hold the power, who's okay with with like what's the circumstances around the power holding the financial power in this relationship. Because one, knowing it, and then two, accepting it, and then three, what do we do next, all depends on where we start with. And so for you to recognize I have the power, for her to recognize I don't have the power, for you both to recognize we both are willing to accept that Mark has the power, she does not. And then for Mark to go, okay, how do I mitigate this in a way that does not harm her is the next step. And I think that is a missing piece in a lot of financial planning conversations around how do we handle this power differential. And one thing that I believe is super important for financial advisors to know, to acknowledge, and to take steps to work on with the people that they have in their care with their clients.
Incredibly well put. And I'll add one thing to it. I was almost going to say I wasn't going to add anything to it, but that would shock the people who know me. Something I picked up in working with Ted Klontz, who we talked about in our last conversation, is that when I'm meeting a couple for the first time, I'll ask a question, and then the first person that answers, I will say, thank you for that. And then I'll turn to the other person and say, I'd like to hear your answer to that question. Because you can get some really good signals about who is effectively the alpha in the relationship by who jumps up and answers the question. And then I want to make sure that the person who's not the alpha is never drowned out in the conversation. So I'm going to give them first crack. And then we see what happens from there. It's just something I learned to do, and it is incredibly effective in anything, not just our profession, but anything where you're dealing with multiple people.
So I want to be very clear that for financial advisors, it's not our job for us to solve for this gap. What we can do is recognize it, accept and acknowledge it, and then help our clients plan in a way that equally benefits and does no harm for either of the spouses in a planning relationship where you're working with a couple, or when you're planning for legacy, as those assets are passed on.
Yeah, and I'll interject one thing. I do think it is our fiduciary duty to make sure that both parties are educated well enough to understand what's going on. You don't need to know how to pull off a straddle, as a client. But if we are doing a straddle, not that that's something we do on a regular basis, you understand what's happening enough to be able to understand, we did this and here's why. I have no idea how they did it. It worked or it didn't work. But it is our duty.
Absolutely. No, I'm so glad you said that. And I want to differentiate that between, like, for example, statistics, women of color versus white men. Like the statistics suggest, and they show, the facts are out there. Black women, single Black women and Latina women own 9 cents for every $1 of wealth owned by a single white man. Financial advisors aren't going to fix that. Like that is a systemic problem that's going to take a lot more resources, government, social, all of those things. And so if you were to have someone come into your conversation, the thing that a financial advisor can and should do, one, is educate on that. And also in the context of a family relationship, help create parity and safety and balance and equality within a relationship. So that might also look like a man who's working and his wife who's not working. We're creating balance and fairness and parity and long-term financial health for the both of them as part of our planning process. And those are things that, again, outside of our conversations about planning, maybe we are helping to educate and give them and provide connections and opportunities for them to find better pay and to create a better opportunities for income coming in. So more money is flowing in, but then what we do with the money and the cash flow is equally, if not more important, for setting them up for the long term. And we do have a lot of opportunity to help and to make a difference there, which is, again, part of why I love what we do. I love the impact that we can have in this way. Even though we can't solve all the problems, we can definitely step in and bring, like you said, the education and provide a lot of support to create safety and health for the long term.
And the wonderful thing is, we have people like Arlene, who is an incredible coach and has walked it herself, and brings us those experiences. And she's been awesome. And we thank her for what she's done and what she will do.
Appreciate you, Arlene. Thank you for opening this conversation up for us. It's made me better. It's made us better. You're making the world of advice better. And we appreciate you.
A big thanks to our amazing guests who agreed to join us on a journey through their career stories on How Did We Get Here?
If you've enjoyed the laughs, surprises, and unexpected turns, be sure to hit subscribe for more intriguing tales.
Your support means the world to us.
Until the next episode, keep asking, keep exploring, and keep wondering.
How did we get here?
This podcast is not intended as and may not be considered to be investment advice and does not constitute a recommendation of any investment strategy or product for a particular investor. The information presented on this program is believed to be factual and up to date, but we do not guarantee its accuracy and it should not be regarded as a complete analysis of the subjects discussed. Discussions should not be construed as an offer to buy or sell or a solicitation of an offer to buy or sell the investments mentioned. Investors should consult a financial professional before making any investment decisions. The opinions are those of the host and interviewees at the time of the podcast recording and are subject to change. These comments should not be construed as recommendations, but as an illustration of broader themes. Forward-looking statements are not guarantees of future results. They involve risks, uncertainties, and assumptions. There can be no assurance that actual results will not differ materially from expectations. Investments involve varying degrees of risks, and there can be no assurance that any specific investment or strategy will be suitable or profitable for our client's portfolio. All investment strategies can result in profit or loss. Just Boss is an investment advisor representative of WealthTech Partners, LLC, DBA, Lake Avenue Financial, which is a registered investment advisor and only conducts business in jurisdictions where it is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Mark Newfield is an investment advisor representative of Journey Strategic Wealth, which is a registered investment advisor and only conducts business in jurisdictions where it is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators and does not mean the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. The firm is not engaged in the practice of law or accounting. You should always consult an attorney or tax professional regarding your specific legal or tax situation.